You trudge into the bustling streets of ancient Rome, the air thick with the mingling smells of roasted meats, fresh bread, and the tang of something savory, a pungent scent rising from nearby kitchens. You catch a whiff of it, the rich, unmistakable aroma of garum, the famed fish sauce that permeated nearly every Roman meal. It's not the pleasant, delicate aroma of today's gourmet condiments. No, garum smells like the sea, strong, briny, and almost overpowering. Yet, to the Romans, it was nothing less than magic in a bottle. This sauce, this ancient elixir, was more than just a flavoring. It was the foundation of Roman cuisine. Every Roman household, from the humblest plebeian to the wealthiest patrician, used it. And if you thought ketchup was the king of condiments today, you might be surprised to learn garum was much more than that. Think of it as the Roman equivalent of bottled flavor that made everything, from stews to street snacks, shine. You might even find yourself longing for a taste of this ancient concoction, but don't get too excited yet. The recipe? A bit acquired. You probably won't survive a Roman feast without it, to be honest. After all, garum was everywhere. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you are tuning in from in the time, as I'd love to know who's joining me on this journey tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Garum wasn't just a condiment, it was the condiment. But where did it come from? Historians still argue whether garum was a happy accident, a culinary invention by some clever Roman chef, or the result of years of trial and error by fishmongers. It's often said that the fish sauce first appeared on the scene during the 3rd century BC, but no one really knows. Some believe that it came from Greek sailors who, in their travels across the Mediterranean, discovered the fermentation of fish guts as a way to preserve the catch. They must have marveled at the results, a pungent, savory liquid that could be used to elevate the most basic meals. Whatever its origins, it didn't take long for the Romans to seize upon it. Imagine yourself walking into a market in Pompeii or Rome, past the stalls selling spices, fruits, and meats, and there, in a small dark corner, you'll spot barrels of garum. The sauces were often stored in large ceramic jars, sometimes labeled with the name of the artisan or the region where it was made. There's a bit of a joke among archaeologists that some of these labels were more ambitious than others, with certain garum producers marketing their fish sauce as the best in the empire. Spoiler alert, not all were created equal. Still, the high demand kept the artisans busy, with garum appearing not just in Roman homes but also in the kitchens of the elite, from the emperor's court to the homes of wealthy patricians. You lean closer to that old, cracked ceramic jar. The smell is unmistakable, fishy, but also slightly sweet, with an earthy undertone that hints at something far more complex than you'd expect from fermented fish. Garum wasn't just made from any fish, though. It was crafted from the guts, the entrails, the parts of the fish most people would throw away, anchovies, mackerel, and the occasional tuna. The Romans, ever the resourceful bunch, made the most out of everything. To make garum, the fish guts were mixed with salt in large vats and left to ferment in the sun for weeks. The heat, along with the salt, caused the fish's natural enzymes to break down the proteins, turning them into a flavorful, umami-rich liquid that could be used to season just about anything. It sounds simple, but historians still argue whether the key to garum's success lay in the types of fish used or the specific fermentation techniques. Some ancient recipes included wine or herbs to add flavor, but it's the fermentation process itself that truly made garum stand out. You could even say it was the predecessor to modern-day fish sauce, a condiment that can still be found in kitchens around the world today, albeit with a bit of a milder scent. The process was meticulous. The fish were not just dumped into a vat and left to rot, far from it. Roman artisans followed a specific, highly controlled process to ensure the right amount of fermentation, salting, and curing. Garum wasn't something you could whip up casually on a weekend. It took time and patience. In fact, there were even garum factories around the Mediterranean where teams of workers would spend days ensuring that each batch was perfect. They'd mix and stir, ensuring the fish and salt were evenly distributed before sealing the vats to keep the heat in and the air out. But here's the kicker. The Romans didn't just use garum in their kitchens, they had an almost reverent attitude towards it. It wasn't just another condiment, it was an essential part of their diet, their trade, their society. The very fact that garum was made from fish guts might sound off-putting to us, but to the Romans, it was a valuable commodity, prized for its flavor and ability to make even the simplest meal feel luxurious. In fact, Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in garum, alongside their regular wages, as part of their food rations. Can you imagine getting paid in fish sauce? That's a whole new level of dedication to your trade. Historians still debate whether garum was truly considered a luxury good by all Romans, or whether it was more of a working-class staple. Some suggest it was favored by the rich, used to impress guests at elaborate banquets, while others argue it was the common soldier or plebeian who relied on it the most. No matter who was using it, though, garum became synonymous with Roman food culture, found in virtually every Roman kitchen and traded across the empire. While the thought of it might still make you raise an eyebrow, the truth is, garum wasn't just a fish sauce. It was a cultural touchstone, a symbol of Roman culinary ingenuity, and maybe, just maybe, a reminder of how a simple idea can transform a whole civilization. As you stroll through the ancient Roman marketplace, you can't help but notice the ubiquity of garum. It's not just found in the high-end banquets of the rich and famous. It's everywhere, even in the homes of the working-class citizens. Every meal, no matter how humble, is likely to be seasoned with this fermented fish sauce. Whether it's a hearty bowl of lentils, a platter of fresh bread, or a simple salad, a few drops of garum can elevate it from basic to gourmet in the eyes of a Roman. But what exactly was in garum that made it so irresistible? You may already know that garum is packed with umami, the savory taste that enhances other flavors. But here's where things get a bit more interesting. The key ingredient that made garum truly special wasn't just the fish. It was the fermentation process itself, which transformed ordinary fish entrails into a complex, nutrient-dense condiment that would have added not just flavor, but also vitamins and minerals to the Roman diet. Historians still argue whether garum was actually a health food. After all, it was packed with amino acids and other compounds released during the fermentation process. Some even think the Romans might have used garum as a form of early medicine, believing it had restorative properties for the body. It certainly wasn't just about flavoring food. The Romans were meticulous about their health and wellness, and garum could have served multiple purposes in their daily life, from enhancing flavor to acting as a natural digestive aid. So, next time you think about a modern superfood, remember, garum might just have been the ancient world's version of a probiotic powerhouse. Let's also talk about the diversity of garum's uses. It wasn't just a seasoning, it was the seasoning. While some condiments, like mustard or ketchup today, are used sparingly, garum was everywhere, drizzled on almost everything. But what was fascinating about garum was the wide variety of ways it could be made, depending on the region and the artisan. Some types of garum were diluted to make a milder version for everyday use, while others were thicker and richer, intended for the elite or for ceremonial feasts. Just imagine this. On one side of the empire, you might find a garum that's tangy and sharp, perfect for a quick snack of bread and cheese. But in another region, you might taste something that's darker and more intense, made from the finest fish, reserved for the emperors. It's also worth noting that garum was often flavored with herbs, spices, and even wine, making it even more versatile. Historians still debate whether this was a true recipe enhancement, or just a marketing tactic by garum manufacturers trying to stand out in a competitive market. Either way, one thing is clear: garum wasn't just a culinary addition, it was an art form. And while today we might be more familiar with brands of hot sauce or mustard with quirky names, garum had the power to elevate a meal from mundane to memorable. But as much as it was a cornerstone of Roman life, garum wasn't without its controversies. Some detractors claimed it was the cause of addiction to salty, fermented flavors, even though the Romans might have considered that a good thing. There's even an argument to be made that garum's popularity was due to its addictive nature. After all, it had a combination of flavors that would have stimulated the brain, much like the umami-rich flavors we crave in modern-day snacks. As garum became more widespread, it also became a sign of class. The elite had access to the finest, most refined versions of garum, while the poorer classes made do with a simpler, stouter version. That said, garum was still an integral part of every Roman meal, regardless of one's social standing. It was a humble reminder of how certain ingredients can transcend status, uniting people from all walks of life in a shared culinary experience. After all, when you think about it, no one was truly immune to the allure of garum. It was everywhere, and if you were Roman, you were using it. Picture yourself sitting at a Roman banquet, the rich, colorful array of food before you, a masterpiece of meats, fruits, breads, and fish. The air is filled with the hum of conversation and laughter, the clinking of goblets, and the low murmurs of slaves serving food to the well-fed guests. But amidst all the opulence, it's the garum that steals the show. It's in the sauces, the dips, the marinades, and even in the small bowls alongside each dish, ready to be drizzled over whatever catches your fancy. This is not just any condiment. This is garum, the epitome of Roman culinary luxury. The aristocrats of Rome had a certain way of indulging in garum that you might not expect. They didn't simply pour it over everything like the common folk did. They saw it as an art form. It wasn't uncommon for elite Roman chefs to be hired specifically for their ability to craft the perfect garum-based sauce, blending various herbs and spices to create the ideal flavor profile for each dish. So, while the common citizen might splash garum on some bread or lentils, the wealthy were experiencing it in more refined, inventive ways. Imagine a complex, multi-layered sauce that could perfectly complement the richness of roasted lamb or the sweetness of baked figs. These are the kinds of meals where garum shone brightest. But as you settle in at this grand banquet, there's something strange about the whole affair. The guests, as lavish as their attire might be, are still strangely dependent on garum. The elite don't just use it for flavor. It's almost as if garum has become part of their very identity. Roman recipes from this period, rich and decadent, are laced with garum, enhancing the aroma and flavor of everything from fish to desserts. In fact, some historians speculate that without garum, Roman culinary culture might not have been as distinctive as it became. As such a cornerstone of Roman life, garum played a significant role in shaping not only the way Romans ate, but how they viewed the world around them. Garum trade also had its fair share of drama, with competition running high between various regions and brands. Some coastal cities, particularly those in Hispania and North Africa, were infamous for their garum production, often marketing their brands with exaggerated claims of quality and authenticity. Just like the premium products of today, these high-end garum producers would use clever marketing to attract wealthy clients, promising an unmatched flavor and unparalleled sophistication. One can imagine the bustling markets of Rome, with haggling merchants trying to convince the richest families to buy their garum, which was not just a seasoning but a statement of wealth and status. As we continue to unpack the social and economic effects of garum, one thing becomes clear: it was more than just a food item. It was a currency, a status symbol, and a key player in the global economy of the Roman Empire. It united the disparate regions of the empire under the common banner of Roman culinary culture, yet it also deepened the divisions between the rich and poor. The trade routes that carried garum around the empire were not just about bringing a popular condiment to new lands. They were also pathways for the flow of wealth, power, and influence. The presence of garum in far-flung parts of the empire also points to the incredible power of Roman trade networks. You'd find the sauce as far away as Britain and even in parts of Persia. The Romans, in their relentless pursuit of expansion, brought garum to people who may have never tasted anything like it before. Some even speculate that this global reach of garum was an early precursor to the spread of Roman culture itself, with food playing a central role in cultural exchange. Now, let's step into the kitchen. Imagine you're in the heart of a Roman home, maybe a small villa tucked away in the outskirts of Rome, or perhaps a bustling apartment in Pompeii. The smells are familiar: fresh bread baking, herbs simmering, and in the background, the ever-present scent of garum. You can almost hear the clink of the earthenware jars as they're brought out to accompany the evening's meal. Garum, after all, was so omnipresent in Roman life that you'd be hard-pressed to find a dish without it. But let's take a closer look at how garum was used in these kitchens. When you sat down to eat in ancient Rome, you might have had a variety of food before you, but each one would be accompanied by the distinctive taste of garum. While we might use olive oil or butter in modern kitchens, Romans used garum not only as a seasoning but as a key cooking ingredient. In fact, garum could be used in everything from soups to sauces, and even in desserts, although the latter might sound a bit jarring to modern ears. Think about it. Romans would take the pungent fish sauce and add it to sweet dishes, using it to bring out a deeper, umami-rich flavor in their food. Historians have uncovered recipes in ancient cookbooks that include garum as a secret ingredient in both savory and sweet dishes. The traditional Roman Apicius cookbook, which many historians refer to as the culinary Bible of ancient Rome, features numerous recipes where garum takes center stage. Whether you were making a meat stew, a vegetable dish, or a delicate fish pâté, garum would likely be a key part of the recipe. It wasn't just an afterthought either. It was an integral part of the flavor profile, adding depth and richness to the dish. Imagine a slow-cooked stew of lamb, vegetables, and garum, bubbling away over a fire. This is the kind of meal that the Romans would savor while discussing politics or planning military strategies. But garum wasn't always used as a luxurious flavor enhancer. For the common Roman, garum was often the easiest way to season a meal without relying on expensive imported spices or fresh herbs. In fact, many common Roman dishes, like pulse, a type of porridge, or panis, bread, were often flavored with nothing more than garum and a bit of salt. This was the Roman equivalent of a comfort food, simple yet satisfying. If you were a Roman soldier on the front lines, surviving on rations, garum could turn the most bland, uninspiring meal into something worth eating. Now, picture the scene: a group of Roman soldiers, gathered around a campfire after a long day of marching, stirring a pot of pulse, mixed with a healthy dose of garum to add flavor. To us, this might sound like an odd combination, but to the Romans, it was a hearty meal that gave them the energy to continue their demanding lifestyle. Garum wasn't just for the wealthy. It was practical, versatile, and could be used in a variety of ways to make the most out of whatever ingredients were on hand. There's also the fascinating fact that garum was often used in Roman baths. No, it wasn't used in cooking, at least not directly. But you might have been surprised to learn that some Romans believed that garum could be used for medicinal purposes. The ancient Romans, known for their complex approach to health and wellness, were keen on using various foodstuffs to treat ailments. Some even believed that garum, with its rich amino acids and salty properties, could cure ailments like indigestion or poor circulation. While it might sound far-fetched, there's evidence that garum was used in ancient Roman medicine as a way to balance the body's humors. Whether or not it actually had healing properties is up for debate, but it's clear that the Romans didn't just eat their garum, they revered it in all its forms. Historians still argue whether garum's widespread use in medicine was a result of genuine belief in its healing properties, or whether it was just another example of how Romans took culinary creativity to the next level. Some suggest that garum's rich, fermented flavor might have had a placebo effect, convincing people that it could heal when, in reality, it was just the taste that made them feel better. Either way, it's a testament to how ingrained garum was in Roman life. It wasn't just a condiment or a culinary ingredient. It was a multi-purpose product that crossed the boundaries between food, medicine, and culture. When you stop to think about it, garum was far more than just a seasoning. It was the flavor of ancient Rome itself. It defined the tastes of a civilization that lasted for centuries and was intertwined with Roman trade, social customs, and daily life. It was an emblem of the empire's reach, its economic power, and its ingenuity in the kitchen. As you drift off to sleep tonight, imagine yourself walking through the cobblestone streets of Rome, past the markets where barrels of garum are being sold to both the wealthy and the poor, each person, regardless of status, taking part in this delicious Roman tradition. The story of garum takes an interesting turn as we move beyond its use in Roman kitchens and delve into its influence on Roman trade and commerce. While we've already discussed garum's vital role in daily life, what truly sets it apart from other ancient food items is the degree to which it became entwined with Roman economic power. Garum was more than a condiment. It was a commodity, one that the Romans exported far and wide, bringing in significant profits and allowing them to establish new economic and cultural ties across the empire. So, let's take a moment to consider garum as an economic driver. Think of the vast network of trade routes that stretched across the Roman Empire. Goods like olive oil, wine, and pottery were commonly traded, but none were as universally beloved or as culturally significant as garum. From Spain to North Africa, from Gaul to the Eastern Mediterranean, garum was a fixture in Roman trade. This wasn't just a local product, it was an empire-wide phenomenon, shipped across the seas in large quantities. And just like any valuable commodity, it had its own complex trade system in place. As a result, garum contributed significantly to the Roman economy, sustaining both local workshops and large-scale production facilities along the Mediterranean coast. The production of garum was concentrated in specific regions of the empire, each with its own distinct style of making the sauce. For example, the city of Pompeii was famous for its fish salting factories, where the garum produced there was especially prized for its high quality. In Hispania, modern-day Spain, particularly in the region of Baetica, garum production was a booming industry, with workshops creating some of the most sought-after varieties. Archaeologists have unearthed evidence of garum factories throughout the empire, many of them outfitted with large vats for fermenting fish. These factories weren't just making the sauce for local consumption. They were exporting it to other provinces, fueling the Roman economy with a steady stream of this salty liquid. Historians still debate whether garum was the first true multinational food product. Some argue that its production and distribution were remarkably sophisticated for its time, resembling the mass-market products we see today. The scale at which garum was produced, at factories, on farms, in coastal regions, was unprecedented, and it was consumed by nearly every social class. For the lower classes, it was essential for adding flavor to basic meals. For the wealthy, it was a symbol of refinement, an item to be served in the most extravagant feasts and traded as a luxury item. But this widespread distribution wasn't just about making the rich richer. While garum's higher-end varieties were certainly marketed as symbols of luxury, the lower-quality versions of the sauce were incredibly affordable. Garum helped to bridge the gap between the social classes, ensuring that every Roman, regardless of status, had access to this essential culinary tool. So, in many ways, garum represented the Roman ideal of luxury for all, where even the humblest citizen could experience a taste of what the elite enjoyed, albeit in a simpler form. Let's talk about the workers, the unsung heroes who played a pivotal role in garum production. These were the laborers who spent long hours in the salt-saturated factories, mixing fish guts and salt, stirring the vats, and packaging the finished product for transport. For them, it wasn't a glamorous job, but it was an essential one. Some of these workers were slaves, while others were free laborers who worked in harsh conditions for meager pay. Historians still debate the economic implications of garum production for the working class. Was it a job that allowed people to earn a living, or was it a system that exploited the poorest members of society? In any case, the success of garum as a product was directly tied to the labor force that worked tirelessly to produce it. At its peak, the garum industry employed thousands of workers, making it one of the most important industries in the Roman Empire. The demand for garum was so high that entire villages and towns were built around the factories. These communities were dedicated to the production of garum, with their economies dependent on the success of the sauce. Some towns became renowned for their garum production, with certain regions even establishing a reputation for producing the finest, most sought-after varieties. The name of these towns became synonymous with high-quality fish sauce, and much like today's specialty food regions, think Dijon mustard or Champagne, these Roman locales thrived as garum hubs. It's hard to imagine a product in modern times that would have such a significant impact on both the economy and the culture of an entire empire. Garum was the lifeblood of the Roman culinary world, but it was also integral to its commerce. It connected the Roman world in ways few other products could, forging economic, cultural, and social ties that stretched across the empire. In a sense, garum was more than just a product. It was a symbol of Rome's vast power, its global reach, and its mastery of both food and trade. And while garum may seem like a curious relic of ancient history, it's worth noting that it left an indelible mark on Roman culture. Garum wasn't just about eating, it was about how people lived, how they worked, and how they interacted with one another. In a world where communication and transportation were far slower than they are today, garum served as both a source of sustenance and a way to unite the vast Roman Empire. Imagine for a moment that you're walking through the bustling streets of Rome, the heart of the empire, where everything from politics to trade unfolds before you. The mighty Roman Empire is at the height of its power, stretching across continents, and Garum is at the very core of this cultural and economic juggernaut. As you pass by the market stalls, you overhear merchants discussing the latest batches of garum, each vying for attention with their jars of fish sauce. There's a bit of competition in the air. The wealthy elites want the finest garum, the richest, most flavorful variety, while the common folk have their own more affordable preferences. In this bustling marketplace, garum isn't just a condiment. It's a commodity that represents everything Roman society stands for: trade, luxury, power, and unity. But garum's reach extended beyond the borders of the Roman Empire. As Rome expanded its influence over vast territories, garum spread with it, finding a place in kitchens from the British Isles to Egypt. Roman soldiers, who found themselves stationed far from home in remote provinces, were often supplied with garum in their rations. Can you imagine a Roman soldier on the edge of the empire, far from the comforts of home, stirring garum into his pot of lentils for a touch of flavor? Garum wasn't just for feasts. It was a lifeline for the empire's military, making sure that even the harshest conditions could be softened with the umami richness of their favorite sauce. Historians still argue whether garum's spread to these far-off lands was a sign of Roman power or just a testament to the universal appeal of good flavor. Some scholars suggest that garum's wide distribution was part of Rome's imperial strategy, a tool for unifying far-flung territories under one cultural umbrella. Others believe it was simply because garum was that good, a staple ingredient that transcended borders. Whether it was a symbol of Roman dominance, or a culinary addiction that couldn't be ignored, garum's presence in distant lands was a clear indication of the empire's reach. And then there's the fascinating case of the so-called garum wars. Yes, you heard that right. There were actually rivalries between regions that produced garum. Some towns and cities staked their reputation on producing the finest batch, and competition for the best garum could get heated. Take, for example, the region of Baetica in Spain, which was known for producing garum that was so prized, it became synonymous with luxury. It's said that high-ranking Roman officials would place orders for Baetican garum years in advance, anticipating its arrival with bated breath, like modern-day connoisseurs waiting for the newest bottle of wine. The trade wars between these regions were fierce, and each region tried to outdo the others, claiming that their garum was superior. This led to a bit of a garum elite, with certain garum types being seen as the ultimate expression of Roman culinary superiority. So, while garum may seem like just a fish sauce today, to the Romans it was a symbol of status, sophistication, and even power. To own the best garum was to show that you were part of the elite class, and to trade in it was to be part of an intricate web of commerce that spanned the entire Mediterranean world. It wasn't just a food product, it was a currency, a symbol, and a tool that allowed people to define their place in Roman society. But garum's journey didn't end with the fall of the Roman Empire. As the empire crumbled and the Middle Ages dawned, the trade routes that had once carried garum across the Mediterranean were disrupted. With the collapse of the empire came a decline in the production and consumption of garum. In the chaos that followed the fall of Rome, many of the garum factories closed, and the once flourishing trade dwindled. The knowledge of how to make garum didn't disappear entirely, but it did become much less widespread. As time passed, the use of garum faded into obscurity, and by the time of the Middle Ages, it had become a distant memory for most Europeans. The empire's collapse had broken the connection between regions that once produced the sauce, and it was no longer as central to the culinary traditions of the Mediterranean world. This was the end of Garum's golden age. Historians still debate why Garum fell out of favor. Was it the political instability that followed the fall of Rome? Or was it simply that new methods of flavoring food took hold as people began to focus on different culinary traditions? One thing is for sure, Garum became a symbol of the passing of an era. For centuries, it disappeared from the historical record, becoming a forgotten relic of the past. But the impact it had on Roman society, culture, and cuisine never truly disappeared. It simply became a faint echo in the annals of history. But as with many things in history, just because something fades doesn't mean it's gone forever. Garum, the mighty fish sauce of the Roman Empire, would make its return in a most unexpected way, through the careful hands of archaeologists and historians. While Garum was largely forgotten in the centuries that followed the fall of Rome, its legacy remained locked in ancient manuscripts, ruins, and jars buried beneath layers of history. It wasn't until the Renaissance that the world began to take a renewed interest in the recipes and culinary techniques of the ancients. Scholars, eager to understand the classical world, would begin to uncover the secrets of Garum once again. Imagine, if you will, a team of modern-day archaeologists uncovering the ruins of a Roman kitchen, their shovels digging through centuries of earth and debris. As they carefully brush away the dust, they uncover an ancient clay jar, its surface weathered but still legible with faint markings. Inside, there's evidence of a substance that once played a central role in Roman culinary life, the remnants of garum. Through scientific analysis and careful study of ancient texts, historians began to piece together the complex process of garum production. Over time, researchers discovered how this humble fish sauce had become one of the most important food products of the ancient world. Historians, in their quest for culinary authenticity, began to experiment with ancient recipes for garum, trying to recreate the rich, umami-filled sauce that had once been the backbone of Roman cuisine. But as you can imagine, replicating garum's ancient flavor wasn't as easy as following a modern recipe. The key to garum's success lay not just in the ingredients, but in the fermentation process, the climate, and the specific types of fish used. Garum's deep, rich flavor was the result of months of fermentation, where fish entrails and salt were left to break down in the sun, creating a sauce that was at once salty, savory, and almost addictive. Historians still argue about the exact process used by the Romans, but they agree on one thing: garum was not just a simple fish sauce. It was a carefully crafted product, honed over centuries. Modern efforts to recreate it have resulted in some fascinating discoveries. In fact, some contemporary chefs have attempted to bring back garum in their own kitchens, experimenting with ancient methods and ingredients to capture the essence of the Roman sauce. While these recreations might never be as authentic as the original garum, they offer a tantalizing glimpse into the past, a chance to taste what ancient Romans might have eaten. But the real beauty of garum's revival isn't just about the taste. It's about the story it tells, the story of how an ancient sauce, once thought to be lost to history, can still make its presence felt today. It's a reminder that history isn't just something we read about in books or see in museums. It's alive, waiting to be rediscovered. In many ways, garum is a symbol of the resilience of Roman culture, a culinary tradition that once spanned an empire, and is now being brought back to life by modern historians and food enthusiasts. As we move into the modern age, garum's legacy continues to influence our kitchens. While we don't use garum in its ancient form anymore, its influence can be seen in many of the fish sauces we use today. From Southeast Asian fish sauces like Vietnamese nuoc mam to the Thai Nam Pla, the essence of garum lives on in these modern-day condiments. You might even find traces of garum in some Mediterranean dishes, where anchovies and fermented fish products still play a role. So, in a way, garum didn't completely vanish. It simply evolved, traveling through time, carrying with it a rich history of ancient flavors and culinary innovation. As you sit down to your next meal, take a moment to appreciate the centuries of history behind the fish sauce or anchovy paste on your plate. Every drop of it carries the legacy of the Romans, who, in their quest for flavor, were willing to go to great lengths to create something extraordinary. And perhaps, next time you encounter a dish seasoned with fish sauce, you might find yourself thinking back to that Roman banquet, to the soldiers who lived off their rations, and to the artisans who spent long hours perfecting a batch of garum. You'll realize that, in some small way, you're still connected to that distant past, savoring the same flavors that once defined an empire. Historians still argue about whether garum's influence truly reached the farthest corners of the Roman Empire, but one thing is certain: its cultural impact was undeniable. Whether used to add depth to a simple meal or to signify status at an elite banquet, garum was more than just a fish sauce. It was a symbol of Roman identity, a condiment that transcended class, culture, and time itself. By now, you've experienced the rise and fall of garum through the Roman Empire and beyond. But, as with any enduring legacy, garum's story takes a darker turn as we enter the medieval and early modern periods. As Rome crumbled and the once thriving cities of the empire fell into ruin, garum's production dwindled. The grand factories along the Mediterranean coast went silent, and the trade routes that once carried barrels of the prized fish sauce to all corners of the empire were abandoned. With the fall of the Roman Empire, many of the culinary traditions tied to it, including garum, also faded into the background. But just because garum faded from view doesn't mean it disappeared completely. While the recipe became lost to history for a time, remnants of garum's influence can be found in some of the early medieval texts and recipes. Scholars of the period often referenced fish sauces in their writings, suggesting that some form of garum or its derivatives might have continued to be used in kitchens, albeit on a much smaller scale. Garum had been so integrated into Roman food culture that its absence would have been hard to ignore for long. Historians still argue about how much garum influenced the cuisines of medieval Europe. Some scholars believe that the decline of garum's production was a direct result of the collapse of the Roman trade networks. Without the centralized power of the empire to facilitate mass production and distribution, it became harder for smaller kingdoms to maintain the same level of quality or quantity. Other historians suggest that as Christianity spread across Europe, the Church's ascetic practices led to a reduction in the use of luxurious or decadent foods like garum, which was often associated with the indulgence of the Roman elite. Whatever the reason, garum's once proud status as a culinary staple was all but lost in the early Middle Ages. Yet, even as garum was pushed into obscurity, remnants of it survived in various forms, lurking in the kitchens of medieval Europe. Early forms of fish sauces, based on similar principles to garum, continued to be made throughout the Mediterranean. These sauces, which used fermented fish or anchovies, often found their way into the kitchens of Europe's nobility, though they were not as revered as garum had been in ancient Rome. In many ways, this early medieval period represents garum's slow and gradual fade into obscurity, its once glorious reputation dulled but not entirely forgotten. At the same time, garum's decline wasn't just about food, it was about a shift in cultural practices. With the fall of the Roman Empire and the rise of feudalism, society itself changed. The elite of the Roman Empire, who once dined on vast banquets laced with garum, were replaced by kings, lords, and church officials who valued simplicity and austerity. These new rulers of Europe had little use for the luxurious tastes of garum. The once flourishing trade networks were replaced by smaller, more localized economies, where the wealthier classes no longer had the same access to exotic products like garum. The grandeur of Roman feasts, and the ubiquitous presence of garum, became a distant memory. It's not until the Renaissance that garum, or at least its influence, is revived. As the Renaissance thinkers turned their attention to classical knowledge, interest in the food of ancient Rome began to resurface. Scholars and chefs started to dig into ancient Roman texts like Apicius, the great Roman cookbook, and began to rediscover the culinary techniques of the ancient world. This marked the beginning of garum's slow resurgence, albeit in a much subtler form. Still, garum wasn't the same by this point. As the world moved into the modern age, new flavors and techniques replaced the Roman classic. Modern fish sauces, like the ones used in Southeast Asia today, evolved from garum but lacked the complex production methods that once made the Roman sauce so unique. The popularity of fish sauce in countries like Vietnam and Thailand can be traced back to garum's influence. But these modern sauces are a far cry from the centuries-old Roman concoction. So, while garum may not have returned in its original form, its spirit lived on, adapted by new cultures and new generations of cooks. Perhaps the most fascinating part of garum's revival is how it came to be rediscovered by modern-day food lovers and historians. In the last century, archaeologists and culinary historians have worked tirelessly to recreate ancient Roman dishes, including garum. They've studied ancient Roman cooking methods, scoured ancient texts, and even experimented with recreating garum's unique fermentation process. Some have come close to the original, while others have put their own twist on the ancient recipe. The resurgence of interest in ancient foods and cooking methods has allowed garum to find its place in modern culinary culture, albeit as a historical curiosity rather than a widespread condiment. As you reflect on garum's incredible journey, from the height of Roman culinary culture to its near forgetfulness in the medieval period, to its eventual rediscovery in the modern age, you begin to appreciate just how deeply ingrained food is in the fabric of society. Garum, a humble fish sauce, tells the story of empire building, cultural exchange, and the relentless passage of time. It reminds us that even the simplest things, like the humble condiment, can have a profound impact on the world around them. Let's take a moment to consider the enduring legacy of garum. While it may seem strange that a fermented fish sauce became such an essential part of ancient Roman life, it's fascinating to think about how something so seemingly simple could have such far-reaching consequences. Garum wasn't just a culinary creation, it was an emblem of Roman sophistication, trade, and empire. As you reflect on its significance, you start to realize that garum wasn't just a condiment. It was a reflection of Roman ingenuity, a testament to their ability to take something as mundane as fish guts and transform it into a luxury item that could travel across the empire. In fact, the very idea of garum's transformation, from humble fish entrails to prized commodity, speaks to something fundamental about Roman society. The Romans were nothing if not resourceful. They had a way of taking what was available to them and using it to their advantage. In this case, garum was an example of how the Romans turned what others might have seen as waste into a product that transcended its humble origins. It's the perfect example of Roman pragmatism, and it's no wonder garum became so deeply embedded in their daily lives. But beyond the Romans, garum's influence spread to other civilizations. The very process of fermentation, which was used to create garum, has survived through the centuries, passed down and adapted by different cultures. Modern fish sauces, whether they're used in Vietnamese, Thai, or even Mediterranean cooking, can trace their roots back to the Roman tradition of garum. In fact, today's anchovy-based sauces, like those used in Italian cuisine for pasta sauces or salad dressings, owe a great deal to the original Roman garum. What's fascinating, though, is how garum continues to spark interest in modern-day culinary circles. As food enthusiasts rediscover ancient recipes, some have begun to experiment with recreating garum's unique flavors. The trend of historical cooking has gained popularity, with chefs attempting to bring back ancient dishes, including garum, in an effort to revive the flavors of the past. Garum might no longer dominate the culinary world the way it did in ancient Rome, but its legacy continues to be felt, not just in historical food studies but in modern kitchens as well. You could even say that garum has become a culinary time machine, a way for chefs and historians to taste the past. But even beyond food, garum's legacy speaks to something more profound. As a symbol of Roman culture, garum represents the complexity and sophistication of the ancient world. The very fact that something as simple as fermented fish could become an empire-wide commodity is a testament to the Romans' ability to innovate, to create something out of nothing, and to build an empire around trade, culture, and cuisine. Garum, in all its pungency and simplicity, captures the essence of Roman life, their resourcefulness, their love of luxury, and their appreciation for the small pleasures that made life in the empire so vibrant. Historians still argue about the precise origins of garum and the reasons for its decline, but there's one thing that's undeniable. It was a key part of Roman identity. Whether you were a soldier on the front lines, a noble at a feast, or a common Roman preparing a simple meal at home, garum was an integral part of the culinary experience. It was more than just a condiment, it was a cultural artifact, a link between the ancient world and the modern one. And while we may never know the full extent of garum's influence, it's clear that this humble fish sauce left an indelible mark on history. As you sit back and think about all the things garum has been through, its rise to culinary prominence, its spread across the Roman Empire, its near disappearance in the Middle Ages, and its slow revival in modern times, you can't help but feel a certain appreciation for the resilience of this ancient condiment. Garum is a reminder that even the smallest things can have an outsized impact, whether it's a fish sauce that once nourished an empire or a simple idea that sparked centuries of innovation. So, as you drift off tonight, imagine a Roman kitchen in full swing, pots simmering, garum being added to stews, meat dishes, and salads, and think about how a simple sauce, born of fish guts and salt, became a cornerstone of Roman culture. In many ways, garum was as much a part of Roman identity as their monuments, their roads, or their legions. And though it may have faded from the forefront of history, it's a testament to the ingenuity of the Romans that something so humble still lingers in the world today. As you settle deeper into the soft shadows of Roman culinary history, there's one more remarkable aspect of garum's legacy that we must explore: the symbolism it carried and the subtle but profound influence it had on both Roman society and the cultures that followed. When we think about food today, it often represents more than just sustenance. It's about comfort, tradition, and identity, much in the same way that garum played a symbolic role for the Romans. As odd as it may seem to us, garum was more than just a tangy, umami-packed sauce. It was the very essence of Roman culture in a bottle. In ancient Rome, food was a direct reflection of class and status. The lavish feasts of the wealthy, with their intricate courses and expensive wines, would be accompanied by the finest garum, rich, flavorful, and carefully crafted. Garum wasn't just used in the cooking, it became a statement of power and wealth. Imagine hosting an elaborate banquet, where the finest garum is served alongside roasted meats, exotic fruits, and decadent desserts. The very act of using high-quality garum marked you as someone of importance, someone who could afford such luxury. Historians still argue whether the use of garum was truly democratic, available to all Romans, or if, in reality, it remained primarily the domain of the elite. Some suggest that garum's luxury status was enhanced by clever marketing, with high-end versions of the sauce being promoted as the best, the purest, the most Roman garum. Meanwhile, more modest versions, salter, less refined, were relegated to the daily meals of the lower classes. This disparity is a reflection of how food often mirrors the social structures in any civilization, where access to the finest ingredients and the most luxurious dishes often signals wealth, power, and prestige. But what's fascinating is how garum served to unite Roman society in a way that transcended class divisions. While garum may have been a marker of wealth for the elites, it was equally a unifying element for the common people. This was a sauce that, despite its association with luxury, became part of the everyday diet for Romans from all walks of life. The very fact that it could be used in such diverse ways, from lavish banquets to humble soldier rations, speaks to the versatility of garum. It wasn't just about the elite, it was about the shared experience of Roman culinary life. Garum, in its many forms, connected people, rich and poor alike, through a common flavor that united their meals, their culture, and their empire. As you reflect on garum's role in Roman society, it's clear that the sauce had far-reaching significance. It wasn't just a condiment, or a seasoning, it was a symbol of Roman culture itself. In a world where food was intertwined with politics, religion, and social hierarchy, garum represented a connection to the past, to tradition, and to the empire's vast networks of trade and influence. For the Romans, garum was more than just a taste. It was a cultural artifact that carried with it a sense of identity and belonging. Even after the fall of the Roman Empire, garum's legacy lived on in subtle ways. Its influence can be seen in the culinary traditions of the Mediterranean and beyond, where fish sauces and fermented fish products continue to play a central role in the kitchens of many cultures. Whether in the form of modern-day fish sauces used in Southeast Asia or the anchovy-based sauces in Mediterranean cuisine, garum's essence has endured through the centuries. It's a testament to the lasting power of flavors that have the ability to transcend time and place. In a way, garum became a bridge between the ancient and the modern. As modern food historians and chefs began to revive ancient recipes and rediscover the lost flavors of the Roman world, garum emerged as a symbol of culinary experimentation and nostalgia. Chefs, intrigued by the idea of recreating this ancient sauce, have experimented with fermentation methods and fish combinations to bring a piece of history back to the table. While we may never fully capture the original essence of garum, the fact that it continues to inspire chefs and food enthusiasts today speaks volumes about the enduring appeal of ancient flavors. As you relax into the sounds of the evening, it's comforting to think that garum, despite its rise and fall, still plays a role in the way we connect to the past. The lessons of Roman culinary ingenuity, of turning simple ingredients into something extraordinary, continue to influence our kitchens today. Garum was never just about the taste, it was about history, culture, and identity. And now, as you drift toward sleep, you can rest easy knowing that, in some small way, every dish seasoned with fish sauce carries with it the legacy of an empire. As the night deepens, you can almost hear the faint hum of ancient Roman life, carriages clattering down cobblestone streets, the murmurs of merchants and citizens mingling, and in the background, the quiet clink of jars of garum being prepared for yet another bustling day of trade. Garum wasn't just a part of Roman cuisine. It was woven into the very fabric of the empire's daily existence. From the grandest banquets in imperial palaces to the simple, hearty meals of soldiers in distant provinces, garum made its way into nearly every Roman dish. It wasn't just a flavor enhancer, it was a symbol of the empire's culinary prowess, a liquid link that bound distant lands and cultures together under the banner of Rome. But there's something even more interesting about garum's legacy, the way it transcended borders and cultures. As Roman trade routes expanded, garum spread across the Mediterranean and beyond, carried by merchants and sailors to far-flung corners of the ancient world. It's hard to imagine a dish that embodies the connection between diverse cultures better than garum. The Romans weren't just selling fish sauce. They were spreading the cultural influence of their empire, whether they realized it or not. Garum made its way into places like North Africa, Gaul, and even Britain, showing how Rome's culinary influence was as widespread as its political power. In many ways, garum was the Roman Empire in a jar. Its distribution was a testament to the empire's ability to bring the same flavors, the same experiences, to every part of the known world. The influence of garum wasn't just about trade, it was about sharing a piece of Roman culture with others. It's no surprise that, in the centuries that followed the fall of Rome, garum left its mark on the cuisines of many cultures. Today, it's easy to see garum's influence in the fish sauces of Southeast Asia, Mediterranean anchovy pastes, and even in some of the world's most beloved dishes. Historians still argue about the exact trajectory of garum's spread and its ultimate decline. Some suggest that, after the fall of Rome, the production of garum slowed as the empire's trade routes fractured and decentralized. Others believe that the decline of garum in the West had more to do with the changing tastes of medieval Europe, which saw a shift toward more simplified and austere flavors. In any case, garum didn't disappear completely. It simply adapted, evolving into the fermented fish sauces that remain central to many of the world's cuisines today. The modern resurgence of interest in garum is a fascinating story in itself. As food enthusiasts and chefs dive into ancient cooking techniques, there's been a renewed interest in recreating garum. In recent years, there have been attempts to revive the ancient sauce, with some culinary experts experimenting with fermentation and fish combinations to produce something that comes close to the original. While these modern attempts to recreate garum can't fully capture the flavor and authenticity of the Roman version, they speak to the enduring allure of this ancient condiment. Garum wasn't just a food item, it was a symbol of Roman culture, and now, in the 21st century, it's being rediscovered in modern kitchens across the globe. The beauty of garum lies in its simplicity, just fish, salt, and thyme. And yet, this unassuming combination became the backbone of Roman cuisine and the catalyst for centuries of culinary exchange. Its legacy, despite the fall of the Roman Empire, continues to shape the way we eat today. Think about it. Every time you add a splash of fish sauce to a dish, whether it's in an Asian stir-fry, a Mediterranean pasta, or even a simple salad dressing, you're participating in a centuries-old tradition that started with the Romans. It's hard to think of another food that carries such a rich history. While many ancient foods have faded into obscurity, garum has endured in some form, proving that even the most humble of culinary inventions can have a lasting impact. It's a reminder that food isn't just about sustenance, it's about culture, history, and connection. The flavors that the Romans developed centuries ago continue to echo in our kitchens today, reminding us that the past is never truly gone. It's just waiting to be rediscovered. So, as you reflect on the fascinating story of garum, its rise, fall, and revival, consider how food connects us to our history. Garum was more than just a seasoning. It was a way for the Romans to communicate their identity, their trade, and their empire. Now, it serves as a reminder that food isn't just for eating, it's for storytelling, for connection, and for remembering the cultures that came before us. Now, let's take a moment to really appreciate how garum's story extends far beyond just a historical curiosity. It's a living, breathing piece of culture that continues to inform how we think about flavor today. Even as garum itself faded from wide-scale production, its essence lived on through its modern-day descendants. And this isn't just some culinary relic that we study for historical amusement. It's part of a larger tradition of fermented foods that has shaped global cuisine. Just as we look at modern-day fermented products like kimchi, soy sauce, and even wine, garum can be seen as a precursor to many of the fermented treasures that continue to be loved in kitchens around the world. When we think about fermentation today, it's often in terms of health benefits, particularly the probiotics and digestive health that these foods are said to provide. Roman cooks, however, weren't thinking about gut health or probiotics. Instead, they focused on the practical aspects of fermentation, preserving fish and enhancing flavors. But in the process, they stumbled upon something extraordinary. Garum, in all its salty, fermented glory, wasn't just a tool for survival during lean times. It was a food that could elevate the simplest of dishes, making them feel rich and luxurious. And in a way, that's still true today. Whether you're adding a dash of fish sauce to a stir-fry or a few anchovies to a pasta sauce, you're unlocking layers of flavor that might otherwise be missing. In a sense, garum's rebirth in modern culinary practices isn't just about nostalgia for the past. It's about the timeless appeal of fermented flavors and the way they can transform a dish. So, when chefs today use fish sauce, they're not just honoring a recipe from the ancient world, they're tapping into the same deep-rooted desire to enhance flavor and transform the ordinary into something extraordinary. It's this very desire that made garum so universally loved across the Roman Empire, and why its legacy persists today, albeit in different forms. Now, imagine stepping into a modern kitchen, perhaps in Southeast Asia, where fish sauce is as integral to daily cooking as salt is to us. As you hear the hiss of the sauce being poured over a sizzling stir-fry, think of the Romans who did the same thing thousands of years ago, albeit with a different process and a different type of fish. The history of garum is alive and well, evolving into the fish sauces we know today. From the bustling markets of Rome to the kitchens of Bangkok or Ho Chi Minh City, garum's journey has traversed the world, leaving its mark on countless culinary traditions. Of course, there's a certain poetry in the way garum has made its return. Its resurrection isn't just about food, it's a reminder of how interconnected the world is, even in its distant past. The ancient Romans may have been separated from us by thousands of years, but when we use fish sauce in our cooking, we share a moment in time with them. We are, in a sense, partaking in the same cultural thread that connected the Roman Empire, from its capital in Rome to the farthest reaches of its territory. Every drop of garum that modern chefs now use is a link to a past we often overlook in favor of the modern and the new. Historians still debate whether the Romans ever truly appreciated the full scope of what they were creating when they first fermented fish to create garum. Did they understand that their humble fish sauce would influence generations of chefs across continents and millennia? Or did they simply consider it just another tool to flavor their food, with no thought for its legacy? Either way, the impact of garum cannot be understated. It wasn't just a fleeting trend, It was a foundation upon which many of today's culinary practices are built. When we examine garum, we see the incredible ways in which food can shape a culture. A simple, fermented product was elevated to a status symbol of luxury, intertwined with social class, commerce, and even medical beliefs. It speaks to how the Romans understood the profound importance of food, not just as fuel, but as a cultural and social glue that tied their empire together. In a way, garum was both a unifier and a divider. It connected distant provinces through trade and shared culinary experiences, yet it also reinforced class divisions, with the elite enjoying the finest varieties while the common people made do with a more humble version. But regardless of its status, garum remained deeply embedded in the daily rhythms of Roman life. It became something much larger than just a foodstuff. It was a reflection of Roman values, their dedication to innovation, and their desire to leave a lasting legacy. And while that legacy might not have been fully realized by the Romans themselves, it is certainly felt today, every time you reach for a bottle of fish sauce or savor a dish seasoned with the tang of anchovies. Garum, in its modern form, still connects us to that ancient world. As you let that thought settle in, it's clear that the story of garum is far from over. It's a story that continues to unfold in our kitchens today, a tale of culinary ingenuity that, much like the empire that birthed it, refuses to be forgotten. And as you slip into sleep, you can almost hear the faint echo of Roman kitchens, where garum flowed freely, seasoning dishes that would feed an empire. It's a reminder that food, even in its most humble form, carries history with it, a history that's still very much alive in the meals we share today. As the final chapter of garum's history unfolds, we arrive at a moment of reflection. The legacy of garum, this once ubiquitous Roman fish sauce, has come full circle. From its rise as the cornerstone of Roman cuisine, to its decline after the fall of the empire, and its eventual revival in modern culinary practices, garum's story is far more than a tale of a condiment. It's a story of cultural exchange, innovation, and the enduring power of food to shape societies across millennia. You may be surprised to learn that the ancient Romans were the pioneers of culinary globalization, of sorts, and garum was their most unexpected contribution to the world's foodways. Though the Romans may have seen garum as nothing more than a practical necessity or a luxury to be flaunted, today, we see it for what it truly is, a symbol of the enduring legacy of the Roman Empire. In the modern kitchen, we find its essence in fish sauces used across Southeast Asia, Mediterranean anchovy pastes, and beyond, carrying with them the rich, umami-packed flavor that the Romans once crafted with such dedication. It's fascinating to think that something as simple as a fermented fish sauce, born of necessity, of preserving food in an empire where refrigeration was a far-off dream, could transcend time, geography, and social class. Garum made its way from the tables of emperors to the homes of common soldiers and slaves, to kitchens thousands of miles away from Rome. Its journey is a testament to how food connects us, not just to each other, but to the past, to cultures long gone, and to those who have come before us. Every time you use fish sauce in a recipe, you participate in this ancient history, bringing a piece of Roman life into your own. Now, as you prepare to drift off into sleep, imagine the echoes of Roman kitchens once filled with the rich smells of garum, cooks stirring stews, soldiers savoring a meal of salted fish, and nobles indulging in lavish banquets. The once pungent fish sauce may have long since faded from its prime, but its influence is alive and well, quietly shaping the food we eat today. Garum has become a bridge across time, connecting you with a world that may seem distant but is closer than you think, linked by the flavors and aromas that have traveled through history and across borders. Garum's story is more than just a culinary journey. It's a reminder that even the smallest things have the power to leave an enduring mark. A bottle of fish sauce might seem like an ordinary item in your kitchen, but it's so much more than that. It's a piece of history, a reminder of the ingenuity of the Romans, and a reflection of the enduring power of food to unite and define us. From the heart of Rome to the kitchens of today, Garum's legacy continues to remind us that history isn't just about the grand events we read about in books. It's also found in the everyday practices that shape our lives, our meals, our traditions, and the flavors that bind us together. As you lay back and let the soothing rhythm of the night carry you away, take comfort in knowing that Garum, though long past its heyday, is still a part of your world. Its legacy lives on in every dish, every meal, and every story that passes through the kitchens of the modern world. The Roman Empire may have fallen, but the flavor of its past lingers on in the food we still savor today. And as you drift off to sleep, imagine the quiet, comforting presence of that ancient Roman kitchen, still alive in the taste of Garum, bringing history to your table with every bite.